Cynthia, hi, my name's Kathy Granillo, and I chair the Women of Wildlife community team. We are part of the Wildlife Society, an affiliate of the Wildlife Society, and our reason for being is to promote and support women in the wildlife profession and to provide things like this, mentoring opportunities and opportunities to learn. So that's what we are, and we have decided to host this webinar based on the wonderful panel discussion that we had at the annual conference. I hope some of you were able to make that, but we are offering this webinar partly because we know a lot of you are not able to make our annual conference, and we want to try to share these messages about mentoring and leadership as broadly as we can. And this webinar is being recorded and will be available on the Wildlife Society website after the webinar completes. So if you know anybody else who might be interested, you can let them know that it's will be available as a recording. Thanks, Cynthia.
All right, so with us today to get us started off is Sara Parker Pauley, who is the director of a statewide department. And Sara did give her presentation as part of a 7-person panel in Louisville, and we're so grateful that she's joined us today. She's going to start us off with a little reminder of her ideas on mentoring. It's a lovely story, so sit back and enjoy the next 10 minutes.
Thank you, Cynthia, and it is my pleasure to join you all today. I am at my home. My husband and I built on an addition for my elderly parents, and they're hopefully soon to move in. So it's just almost completed, not quite completed, but I thought it's a little quieter over here that I would join you all in front of the fireplace in our little new addition. So delighted to be here, and I'm going to share my screen and start the slideshow. And so I did, and so I apologize if this is a repeat for some of you who were in Louisville at the annual meeting. It was such a great honor for me to be on that amazing panel of just spectacular women, and we're hoping Becky Humphreys will be able to join us today. I know she's had something come up, so I'm still hoping that Becky can join. But I did share just a few slides, and I've added just a couple for the benefit of this group. With, as Cynthia mentioned, kind of my perspective on what I call the hero's journey related to this whole thing about leadership, including mentoring. So I hope that there are some of you that know he has since passed, but Joseph Campbell. He was a philosopher, he was an academic, a mythologist, and he spoke a lot about his theory of the hero's journey. And what he basically said is that all stories in life, fiction and nonfiction alike, real life and whether it be books, movies, or whatever, but they're basically one story. And it includes, first of all, the fact that there is a hero. And in fact, each of us is that hero. And our life journey follows the same path, that there is this initial call to adventure and to the discovery of what our individual true purpose in life is. And he says the hero, all of us as heroes, go through this journey that does indeed involve trials and tribulations, successes and failures, and challenges of all sorts in this search of finding our true purpose. And the path we take is never quite the one, and you'll hear, in fact, at the Louisville, all the panelists then agreed, it's never quite the one that you envisioned at the beginning. It's never quite the one that you have planned or maybe in detail designed. In fact, Joseph Campbell said that we must let go of the life we have planned so as to accept the one that is actually waiting for us. and that there is growth and pain through these trials and tribulations, through this adventure. But ultimately, the hero has a revelation amid this challenging journey, a transformation of sorts where their true purpose really does come home and is refined and really comes into clearer light. And with this newfound purpose, the hero returns to share this calling or this purpose for the benefit of others, their community, and the world. So he would go on to say that it's not just the hero. In this story, which is really just one story, in all of our stories where there's really just one, there are some other characters as well. There is the villain, there is the victim, and ultimately there is this mentor or guide as well. So what is this? Let's first of all talk about the victim. And remember, in a given day, we can be all of these characters. Hopefully as we get older and transform in life, we're more often the hero than not. But in any given day or in any given period of time, we can be all of these characters of victim, villain, mentor, and hero. The victim tends to say, I have no control over life. It's somebody else's decision. I'm just going to have to find a job that pays the bills and provides that security because it's just all too much, or the decisions are all in somebody else's hands and I just simply have no control. The victim says it's someone else's fault that things have happened to me, and they just simply don't have the agency to work through, to have fortitude and persevere into something better. The villain has the energy, but they use it to bring people down. They use it to gain control for themselves. And I'm going to give you a quick little story in the spirit of mentoring, where early in my career, in fact, towards the end of my law school career and into my first job, I had two women. I'm going to say they were roughly the same age. One may have been a bit younger, but I'm going to say roughly the same age. I was hoping that both would serve as mentors. One did and one didn't. I'm going to say one was this fabulous mentor guide, and the other one was a bit of a villain. I'm going to call her the Queen Bee, and we're going to talk a little bit about the Queen Bee syndrome. The first one was just fabulous, brilliant and kind and caring, had a growth mindset that, the more she would give, the more there was for everyone. And I still to this day keep in touch with her. She gave me new opportunities. She just encouraged me and motivated me and really convinced me I could do a lot more than what I originally thought I could do. The other one was very threatened, quite honestly, by a young female professional, also a lawyer. And she had a very different response to me, where she wouldn't even enter into conversation with me, despite my attempts. And I was so devastated because I'd had this one fabulous experience of an older mentor, and then had this other experience. But I'm so glad I did have both of those experiences early in my career, because it really made me decide for myself, what kind of mentor did I want to be to other women? And what kind of colleague did I want to be to other women? And early on, I said, I want to be this first kind, not this second kind. So I'm glad I had that experience early on. So you do hear the Queen Bee, where especially sometimes in our fields, there's the world is changing, happily so. But early in my career, there were not very many women in this wildlife conservation space. And so it just happened to be that she kind of liked being one of the few women, and probably women attorneys, and didn't think that there was space for more than that, which is very unfortunate. But the positive story is it really was a learning experience for me on what kind of colleague and mentor I wanted to be. So I think I would just really challenge you to be very intentional about who you decide to select as a mentor or as part of your, what I'm going to call cabinet of advisors. Mentors, they can be younger or older. They can be in your field or not in your field. They can be, you know, so many areas of diversity where you can choose this cabinet of advisors, but it's people, men, women, who you say, I want to learn from them. There are characteristics or traits or areas of expertise that I want to learn from. And so it is really critically important that from an early, it doesn't matter when you start this, but the earlier the better, of just really being selective about your cabinet of advisors, people that can help you see the bigger picture and really move you from just surviving to a thriving environment. So I showed this slide at the annual meeting, and all the other panelists went on to say, exactly, this is what their experience was too. Now, we all plan. We all should plan. We all should think through, and I'm going to have a couple slides to be more intentional about that, what we want our careers to be like. But don't be disappointed if it doesn't end up like Plan A, because it never ends up like Plan A. And I'd like to meet the person who says it does. Real life is new opportunities that appear from nowhere. And because you've met someone who introduces you to someone else, a new change comes about, or a new opportunity comes about that maybe you hadn't planned. And I've got many examples of that. I started my career with the Department of Conservation. I thought I would spend my entire career there. But about 3.5 years in, I got the opportunity to be chief of staff to the House Speaker for the Missouri House of Representatives, something I thought I would never do. I didn't even have an interest in politics. But I ended up accepting that, and it led me on a journey. I'm so thankful now that I did that. I have worked in the for-profit natural resource space. Never thought I would do that. So glad I did. And on the examples go of adventures. When I was in law school, I ended up having an opportunity to go live with Cree Indian on a Cree Indian reservation in northern Manitoba, and lived on a trap line for a wintertime. Never thought I'd do that. Graduated late from law school. But boy, did that just open my eyes. Just so many other opportunities that changed the course of my life. So here it is, guys. This is real life, but embrace it. Embrace it. That doesn't mean you don't plan, because you do. So I'm going to mention this briefly. Here are a couple of slides that I added. We've got something called Missouri Department of Conservation, MDC Leads. So it's a leadership program for emerging leaders. And I take them through this exercise called future authoring. So you really do spend some time being much more intentional about what your goals are. I got this from Dr. Jordan Peterson. Some of you may know that name, professor of psychology at the University of Toronto. But he decided to start asking his students to sit down and write about their ideal future. They were asked to specifically describe the kind of person they wanted to be, the skills they wanted to attain, and the relationships they wanted to have professionally and personally, among other things. And so he takes them through, and so I take my team through this guided contemplative exercise, and he found as a result of that the students really felt like they had more direction in life. They were less anxious about the uncertainty because they thought through it, right? Doesn't mean that these things are going to happen, but the fact that you've thought through where you actually want to head and the things you want to be, things you're looking forward to, the better. So these are the sorts of questions he asked his students, and now I ask my emerging leaders of think about the people you now admire, whether you know them personally or you watch them from afar. Who are the people that you admire? Who are the heroes that you would like to have on that cabinet of advisors? Again, whether you personally know them or not, you can still learn from them. We asked our leaders, think of things that you would like to be able to do better. Maybe that's publicly speak. Maybe it's a host of things. To contemplate your educational and career goals, habits you would like to pursue. What do you want your family life to look like? What about your social network and your leisure activities? And so then we actually take them through this self-mapping exercise for like 20 minutes. We just have them in these different categories, contemplate and daydream, and then actually list out and prioritize the next steps in each of the categories. So here's what my communications director, she does it this way. She says, I want to be a motivational speaker. And so here's her little chart of what will I have to prioritize to get there? What are barriers that are holding me back? Are there any personal or social impacts? How will I monitor my progress? And who am I going to be accountable for this progress with? How will I evaluate my decisions? So this is just an example, and I know this will be part of the recording, and I can even send this separately if people want to see this. But I have to tell you, even later in your career, as you're thinking about either retirement or a next chapter or something else, I think this exercise is actually good for all of us wherever we might be, just to really kind of contemplate, what do we want? What do we want to be? And then what is our plan to get there? So I hope that some of these thoughts have been interesting to you. I will tell you, at this stage in my career now, more than 30 years after joining the Department of Conservation, actually 20 years, after leaving the department, I came back as the director, and I'm not sure I ever would have become the director staying there. It's just by the time I had come back, I'd had quite the journey, not the one that I had planned, but I had learned so many things that, quite honestly, I wouldn't have learned had I stayed, potentially. And so it's the journey I ended up with, and I'm so incredibly grateful for it at this stage. What I would also say is just stay curious, stay inspired, find gratitude, and every day there is something to be grateful for and something you can say that you've learned, and definitely surround yourself with people that will help you see the big picture. I hope this has been helpful to you, and I certainly look forward to perhaps any conversation, any Q&A after this. And so with that, Cynthia, I am going to stop sharing. And hi.
Hi, thank you so much, Sarah. I love the hero's journey, and you told the story so well. You mentioned you're a lawyer, you're a state director, a former president of AFWA, but when did you realize you were on a hero's journey for wildlife, and was mentoring part of that realization?
Hey, that's a great question. And I'm going to say what I realized early on. So I was my undergraduate was in journalism. And, initially I thought I was going to write for the Department of Conservation. I love their magazine, still do. I actually get to write a column every month. So it's kind of fun that I do use that journalism degree. But then I did some study abroad and traveled a bit, came back, went to law school, and thought maybe I'll be an environmental attorney. I didn't know there was such a thing as using a law degree necessarily in the wildlife policy space. But I did, in all honesty, Cynthia, I had some opportunities to intern for different law firms doing what I'm going to call is traditional legal work. And I don't know how to describe this other than to say, when you have found your passion and you found something that, hey, by the way, the heavy breathing is a 10-year-old golden retriever. It's not me. If anybody hears that heavy breathing, got a golden retriever right here. But there was one summer I clerked for a law firm doing stuff that was so counter to what brought me joy and passion that I was miserable. And it hit me then that if I don't find a job that really isn't a job, if I don't find a job where I am motivated by the mission, I'm motivated by the work I do, I knew it would be a long road ahead. And so I just began to research, what can I do in this wildlife conservation space? And how can I use even a policy background? And through that research, found this Center for Wildlife Law in Albuquerque, New Mexico, and luckily had the opportunity to intern there. And that was the woman I talked about that was such an amazing, positive mentor for me, where she said, Sarah, there's not a lot of women in this space. She was like so welcoming. Had she not been that welcoming, I don't know what that would have meant. I knew that I had to find something that made me come alive. What's that great Howard Thurman quote? Find what makes you come alive and go do that, because what the world needs is people who have come alive. I love that quote. It's not maybe verbatim, but that was the idea. Find what makes you come alive. But I had this wonderful initial experience where I was interested in wildlife conservation. I found this nexus where we did a lot of research on legal issues. And then I had this wonderful experience where this woman said, how can I inspire you and motivate you and just create this just additional energy? She just gave me energy. So I had this beautiful experience early on, and then soon after had the other negative experience. But by then, I was locked in and realized just how much more energy I had as a result of finding a path. Didn't know what the career would look like, but I knew I had this initial step and this initial nexus. And then from there, these other opportunities began to present themselves. It's almost magical. Like there was just enough light after that, you take the one step, you have this wonderful experience, and then there's always just enough light for the next step. Sometimes you don't see beyond that, but that's enough for the time.
I love that. So wonderful. We have so many great guides around us if we're able to tap into that. We have at the panel in Louisville, as you know, we collected some questions from the audience, and then we had such fabulous speakers saying wonderful things that we didn't have time to field those questions. So what I'm going to do now is share my screen, and we're going to run through just a few of the questions and some of the panelists who are not with us today. And then we're going to bring Sara back on and be talking a bit about her thoughts on some of her peers' answers. If it will work, come on. Okay. So how do you build a relationship built on trust with mentees or mentors with different lived experiences? So Martha Williams, the current director of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, said just the same as you, Sarah, be curious and learn about each other's experiences. And then Jenny Dixon, who's the Wildlife Division Director in Connecticut, she says the same thing. Ask questions, listen, and show interest in learning about those lived experiences, and be honest that you have more to learn, and make some missteps along the way to creating that relationship. Thought that was an interesting addition that she added at the end. So I'm going to stop sharing again and ask Sara to come on back. And obviously you shared to stay curious, but what do you think about Jenny's second part of that, about learning from the missteps as well as the successes?
Well, I tell you, I think we can, if we're honest, wouldn't it be nice if we never had any missteps? Wouldn't that be nice? I'd like to meet the person who hasn't had a host of missteps, but it really, I'm going to say, combining what Martha has said is even be curious about the missteps. Because I will tell you that we can learn so much when a relationship doesn't go just right. Thinking through, okay, what did I contribute to that? What did they contribute to that? If I could do it over, how could I do it? That combination of curiosity, staying curious, and just that little bit of an after action review, it has served me so incredibly well. Even at this stage in my career, I had an issue last week where I knew in retrospect that I hadn't spent enough time on the front end communication. And as a result, it took a lot longer to get to the outcome just because I didn't prepare the way and apply what I knew to be true, which is just you can never over communicate on the front end. But to Jenny's point, I do think, especially when you're trying to connect with people of diverse backgrounds, that curiosity about them, creating a space of respect, taking the initiative, especially for those of us who are a little longer in our career. We don't know the power of just taking a moment to reach out to someone, to walk across the room and connect with them, to send them a little note. I've learned, I think, boy, all I did was scribble out a little note to someone new maybe, but I learned later what an impact that had on them. But everybody responds to people who have an intentional and real interest in them. And so I love Jenny's comments too. And even if we don't say quite the right things, or even if there's a few missteps, to be, as long as I think we're sincere in our approach and our effort, people are pretty forgiving, I think, of a sincere heart and desire. But till the day you die, I think you have opportunities to learn and grow.
That's good. All right, I'm going to flip back to sharing again and go to another question. All right, so this one, Jenny answers, for men that find themselves with opportunities to mentor women colleagues, is there any advice you would give us that might differ from advice given to women mentors? And Jenny says, just treat them as equals. Avoid words that imply unintentional bias. A woman described as pushy might be called assertive, and if she were a man, those might have different connotations. Try to be aware of that. As a woman, my best male mentors were those who assumed I could do anything they could and possibly more, and did not make gender a part of the relationship.
I would say ditto. Go ahead.
Yeah.
You have another one too.
No, I hit the wrong button actually. Oh, geez.
We can still see you.
Oh, great. Well, see, that's the problem here. It's always fun when I'm not sure how to get it back, rein it back in. Uh-oh. No. Well, I
can speak to that. Yeah, there is, I have had all of my career, men and women mentors, and, men, I love what Jenny suggested, that men mentors absolutely treat you like an equal, treat you as if you can accomplish anything a man can. And really empower you in that way. I think that's so beautifully said. There's no doubt that women mentors, especially perhaps in a field that just have fewer women, can relate in a different way. And so you're going to be able to ask them about certain things that a man in this field won't understand as well. But same way, I tell you, my male mentors, I've watched them. They have had some of the most candid conversations with them. So I do think even having a diversity, however you're defining diversity, a diversity of mentors is a very good thing. So I'm gonna say right on to what Jenny said. I do think as a male mentor, there's, you know, there's going to be some things that you might approach a young, especially a younger woman, a little differently, and perhaps be a little more protective and in certain situations, just to make sure that they feel safe and trusted and all of that. But I'm with Jenny that male mentors, if I felt like they were treating me any differently, that wouldn't be appreciated. And so treat them with equal, at least with equal value. I love that response.
Thanks. I just figured I'd do a misstep in the webinar to illustrate that it's okay.
Absolutely. Oh
All
my
right.
goodness.
So one
Yeah.
from our live audience here. We have, what are some barriers you faced, Sarah, early on, or even throughout your career in conservation? And how did you work through those? You could give a specific example or a general.
Boy, I tell you, I could spend at least a full hour talking about different types of barriers. Some are external, and you know, look, I've been a political. I was the Department of Natural Resources director before the conservation director. I report to a 4-member commission now. I reported directly to the governor in the previous job. And I'll just say in those political appointed positions, even though my background was in natural resource policy, et cetera, you have to learn to accept what's within your control and what's not. And there were times when I was simply prevented from making perhaps the best decision I thought for the agency because of political constraints. And you really have to know what is of greatest value, and you have to, you know, living in that integrity. You know, I've had to make decisions on staff that were not mine to, you know, that they were made for me, and that was just sometimes heartbreaking to, you know, let's say to let somebody go because of a political decision, et cetera. Heartbreaking. So you have to know your own core values and you know, what is the greater good and how can you do the greater good, and what's within your control, what's not within your control. So, you know, I've had to deal directly with some legislators who thought because I was a female that they could talk about me in a certain way. And so I learned to, early in my career, when to make private appointments with them and hold them accountable, and when it wasn't worth the time or the effort, because that's just, you know, you only have so much energy in a day. At this stage in my career, I kind of laugh things off and you know, rather than hold every single person accountable for everything, it's a lot of wasted energy, and that's not where my focus needed to be. So I've, you know, dealt with the kind of the sexism, I've dealt with political stuff. There's always the internal battles too, though, Cynthia. I think sometimes we're our own worst critic. And sometimes it's the, look, I at this stage, you know, as director, I don't need to be the smartest person in the room. I've got brilliant wildlife biologists. I have brilliant engineers. I have financial people. You know, my job isn't to be an expert in all of those areas. It's to know how to surround myself with experts, know how to listen to their counsel, know how to consider you know, levels of risk. And, you know, I'm a very inclusive leader, my team would tell you, because I just believe that it's always going to be a better decision when you involve really the people who's have areas, you know, different areas of expertise, and you know, you can hear from a circle of advisors, which I certainly have depended upon throughout my entire career. So sometimes it's those internal barriers of thinking you've got to be an expert in everything, or not even having confidence in yourself. There are times when I really went through periods of having low self-confidence, even if I was in a position of power, and you've got to work through those internal barriers too. But I believe that if you are every day doing your best based upon a set of values and the mission of the agency and trying to make the best decision for the agency, that things are going to end up okay.
Well, I think that flows really well into the next question I have prepared. So let me see if I can successfully share my screen this time. Well, pretty close. You can see it now, yes?
Yes.
Excellent. Okay. So sometimes that what you just kind of shared, and when a lot of things can be piling on, this one applies. Tips for how to break out of the victim mindset when we're all overcommitted, burnout, and seeking that work-life balance. Janet says it can be useful to reimagine it as work-life balancing, moving from the noun to the verb opens space for fluidity. Some days your best role is to be the boss and have a difficult conversation with your team, and other days you may need to spend more energy on the home front. I love that you started your presentation explaining that you've made space in your home for parents, and it's not always people with children that are trying to balance. It's balancing a lot of different things on the home front, or you have a dog at your feet, so it's not always human family members as well. So I bet you can expand on this one. But first, I'll just say that this is what Martha says. She says, be okay with saying no to additional commitments and remembering that in most cases, that urgent work will still be there in the morning.
I tell you, I don't know how to improve upon either one of those responses because they're spot on. So my husband and I don't have children. We do have four-legged children. But it was not necessarily an intentional choice. It's just where we are. But I love the idea that Janet posits about the work-life balancing. There is no perfect formula for work-life balance. There is no perfect formula. And I think as long as, and it kind of goes back to the exercise that I shared about, what kind of life do we want? And at least having a picture of what we want out of our professional life, out of our personal life. And making sure that we are being intentional about time spent in those areas. As Janet said, there's going to be some days that, like last week, Monday, Tuesday, we are going through a Malcolm Baldrige quality award evaluation in the agency, and we had the examiners in on Monday and Tuesday. That was exhausting. I felt like I was back in law school going to a law school exam. Then we had a commission meeting Thursday, Friday. So my week last week, I rarely saw my husband, and he knew that was coming. He is an incredible support system for me. I don't know how I could do my job without his support. But then this week, there's a little more time for family. And I do think if we're just doing our best, knowing you're just going to have some of those weeks. Sometimes maybe they're months or it's the way life goes, but that you try to find that balance and you're intentional about it, because otherwise work can easily, I think, consume everything. Know your priorities. I think that exercise, whether it's the night before, the morning of, know the three most important things you need to get done. Make sure that you're focusing your best energy on those things to get those done. Work planning is incredibly beneficial. There's a lot of tools to just allow us to do a better job of work planning, but you'll never get through if you're like me, my to-do list is always impossible to get done. I know my priorities, know the most important things, and I think that goes a long way. But again, know the priorities in life, be intentional about how you're focusing your energy, and give yourself a break. Not every day is going to be perfect. If you don't hit all your targets, give yourself some compassion for sure.
Great. Another live question. I really liked that self-idea map, and I bet that resonated with a lot of people on this. But what if you don't have specific career goals? How do you advise to go about and make that self-idea map? This person is 25 years old and interested in wildlife conservation, education, and is finding it difficult to really narrow that path right now.
Right. So again, at 25, I was working for the Department of Conservation, and at a law school focusing on kind of big policy questions for the department. And what I knew at that point in time is this is maybe what I'll do for the next 30 years. I was enjoying it, you know, but be open to, based upon your interests, based upon aptitude, skill sets, what do you enjoy, what are you good at? Be open and curious as to new opportunities. Like you're going to hear me say over and over again, you heard Martha say it. I think you've heard Jenny say it. Be curious, stay curious, because in that openness, new opportunities do tend to appear. They do tend to I say appear from nowhere, but if you're looking, if you're curious, there will be opportunities. Try different things out. Like the law school internships. Boy, I tried some things out, and oh my goodness, there are things I said, if I do this another day, I'm going to go, you know, oh my goodness, this is not for me. But I learned just as much from those experiences as I did from saying, I like this wildlife policy stuff. This is interesting to me. I like the legal angle. I like the big picture versus the detail. And just that constant evaluation of what's bringing me energy right now. Is it the big picture strategic thinking, or is it the detail stuff? And, you know, part of that life mapping is just that curiosity and that capturing of what you're learning about yourself. If it's education, what is it about education? Is it young people? Is it, you know, outdoor based education, or is it you know, more undergraduate, graduate? I mean, the more we experience, the more opportunities we take, the more we learn about ourselves. And so just always be curious about that. Take a step, try something new, capture what it is you've learned about it, and then take the next step. My brother knew when he was in high school, he wanted to be a surgeon. Good for him. He just retired after a wonderful 35-year career as an orthopedic surgeon. Good for him. But those people are few and far between, in my mind, of knowing exactly what you want at an early age and then going to do it. I'm excited for you if that's your path, but it's not been the path that I've experienced, or most people that I work with have experienced.
Well, or like me, I knew I wanted to be a wildlife biologist from a very young age, but I had a completely different vision of what that meant. And I too am interested in the policy and the funding side, but I thought being a wildlife biologist was disappearing into the wilderness with a backpack and not talking to any people. That's not necessarily the case. And I think some of us, I'm not alone in probably that hero's journey to discover that.
Right. And I mean, I think of even the Department of Conservation, we have so many different opportunities for young people now. I mean, if you know, I think of our social science group where they're so focused on either for regulations or for, you know, evaluating staff attitudes or constituent attitudes of using the social sciences as an area to connect with their interests. My goodness, we have artists and writers and videographers and all sorts of folks with in the sciences and engineers. I mean, that the opportunities, if it's the outdoors and nature that you want to connect with, there's more and more opportunities in this day and age in this field.
Well, here's a really important question. For those who feel as though their mentorship they're currently getting is lacking, do you have suggestions for how to negotiate relationships with supervisors to cultivate more mentorship or outside ways to search out mentorship?
You know, I think sometimes it's maybe just having the conversation. You know, I'm trying to think about how I didn't necessarily have a formal conversation. When I think of my mentors now, I didn't necessarily have a formal conversation. I think it's okay to have a formal conversation because as a mentor now, I've had people come to me and say, will you be a mentor? And we establish like a rhythm, maybe a monthly rhythm where it's just a phone call and for an hour. So the expectations are clear. And I've certainly done that formal type of relationship. And I think that works well. If you say, this is, I see you, I see the type of leader you are. Here are the areas, and it was in those formal relationships, what's always beneficial is we kind of say what we're going to talk about the next time around and say, hey, this next time, let's focus on this book or this article or this situation. So we're kind of prepared and focused and spending our time wisely. But for me, and as I think of the mentors I had, I identify them because I liked how maybe they weren't perfect leaders, but there were things about them that I had admired how they made decisions, or admired how they ran a meeting, or admired how they had collaborated with others. And so there was maybe specific things that I admired about certain leaders. And so when I would have a decision coming up, I would just say, hey, could we go for coffee? Could I take you to lunch? I want to brainstorm with you on a couple of things. And we developed relationship over that period of time. I would seek them out and just ask their opinion on certain things. And so it was more of an informal relationship building, but that also has served me pretty darn well over 30 years too. But always be on the lookout. Again, it doesn't have to necessarily be someone that you can even talk to. You can have mentors whether it's on YouTube or you read about them, but you just say, boy, I admire how they handled a certain situation, and capture what it is about those things that you admire, why you admire it. And but again, to this day, I mean, I'm at the tail end, I would say, closer to the end than the beginning. And I still constantly looking for, younger staff. I'll say, boy, I admire in my staff, my one staffer, I'll say, I admire how you led us through that exercise. And I'll tell them, I'll certainly call it out. So I guess I can mentor and be mentored at the same time.
Well, the hour goes fast. I want to try to get to, we promised to talk a little bit about the queen bee. So here's two ideas about that. Anne's advice, and she's the associate director of USGS. My advice is this: don't cultivate envy because a seat is taken by a woman. Instead, observe, engage, and learn from her experience, and realize the path is stronger where more people walk. I love that. The mental space that likely will carry you farther is the one where we connect with each other as human beings and move beyond the notion of competition within our gender. Perhaps this approach will dethrone the queen bee and replace her with a strong, empathetic, brilliant, ambitious conservationist. And then, of course, Martha has something to say, and she says, take a lesson from nature, remembering how much more important worker bees and drones are to the success of the colony. Queen bees are easily replaced in the natural world, and that role may not be exactly what we imagine it is.
I love that. Look, I guess a couple of things. What do you want to be remembered for? Who wants to be remembered as a queen bee? I don't. And look, our careers are fleeting, and I do think at this stage, what do you want to be remembered for? Do you want to be remembered for someone who poured themselves into other people? Regardless of gender, regardless of anything, but poured themselves as a leader into their people? Or do you want to be remembered as a queen bee? My goodness. So think about that. What do you want your legacy to be? I think the other thing I will tell you at this stage of my career is this whole Carol Dweck, fixed mindset, growth mindset. It's real. That has been my experience. That if I believe that there's only so much and I need more of it because it's a fixed amount. And so I need to take more power, more whatever. It's hogwash. The reality is the more you pour into other people, the more that comes back to you. That has been my experience. The more you give of yourself, give space for other people, empower other colleagues, women, men, empower others, more comes back. That has been my experience with over 30 years now in this profession.
Thank you. Well, I want to share one more screen with you, and that is to remind everybody who's a member of the Wildlife Society that on your member portal, you can access it from the dashboard when you log into your member portal. Go up here to resources. We do have a network of an online directory, and then there's also a place where you can put, you can sign up to become a mentor. You can write down here, find a mentor, and then you can offer yourself up to be a mentor. And so if you haven't looked at this, part of this is part of your member benefit, is to have this access. So if you haven't checked it out, I would encourage you to do so. We're going to wrap things up a little bit. And I guess, Sarah, one of the questions that came in was just, do you have some ideas? I know you've been involved with TWS for a bit, and do you have anything else to advise our organization of what we can do for mentors and mentee engagement?
Boy, I tell you, I think I want to applaud you on the panel that we had at the annual meeting, because I do think, heck, I think of all the panels I've been on over many years, that was one of the most enjoyable, because we were women, perhaps more mature in our field, just showing admiration for each other and love and support and encouragement, and certainly answering, hopefully, questions that resonated with our audiences. But I think the more you can do panels like that one, Cynthia, I mean, I love that. Using your website, connecting if there's questions that people have, connecting them to folks who are willing to mentor or provide answers like the ones that we've done today. I think that's a great exercise. I just think that connection and allowing women in this case to see what's possible, and just have people who've maybe walked a little further down the path be able to respond to some of these questions. However you can increase that connection, I think is going to be very beneficial to your members. But that's the first kind of panel I remember of its kind. So thanks for doing that. And I'd say do more of those, in part virtually, and do, more of these things too. I really appreciate the opportunity to just engage at this level, and happy to do so more often if asked.
Well, that's a great segue to finish off with our appreciation. So I'd like to appreciate Kathy and Barb, who were co-coordinators of the panel in Louisville and this webinar. So thank you to that. And then I'll turn it over to Kathy, who's going to give a little more appreciation.
Sending lots of love your way. That was fabulous. Thank you once again. I want to say, the full panel, that was truly amazing. One of also the best ones I've been to. And Ed Arnett actually conspired with me to try to get that panel going. So big shout out to Ed and Cynthia and Barb. And we worked really hard, to try to get that together. I really appreciate all of you guys. We will try to keep offering these things. Would love to hear from any of you out there as watching this webinar, what things you'd like to see too. And look forward to future panel discussions at the next conference and the one after that and the one after that. But thank you so much, Sarah.
Great. And thank you, Kathy. My final word is to thank you, Kathy, for keeping our WOW leadership group in conversation year round. We have every other week phone calls, and whether it's 2 people or 20 people, it's always a great time to plan more things we can do. to everyone here, questions keep a conversation going, and you heard all about curiosity today. So just keep questioning and keep seeking and share the ideas that this conversation sparked with a colleague or a friend. And please continue to let the Wildlife Society and Women of Wildlife community know how your mentorship journey goes. Thank you.
Thank you.